We're live.
Live.
Yay! All right, Group 8 is meeting for the last time to discuss our prompt, and that is focusing on public leadership and leadership in crisis. We believe organizations can prepare leaders at all levels to respond, and considering the communication issues faced by BP in their spill and the failures that happened there. So that's what we're discussing. Who would like to start?
Can I start?
Yes, yes, you can.
Awesome. So I think kind of the biggest part of crisis leadership is coming up with a crisis plan before crisis actually happens. A big thing when I worked at Publix was they kind of trained us in what to do in crisis situations, such as someone is shoplifting, or someone brings a weapon into the store, that kind of stuff. And so part of the training is we go through different situations and scenarios so that we're trained to know how to handle them, even if it's a small crisis like a customer gets angry. How do we handle that? And so just having a plan before crisis actually strikes.
Shelby, on that note, did you ever experience a crisis, and did you see that the response had followed what was planned, or do you guys think that like you can plan, and then there's the emotional response that comes out at the time of crisis? Kind of like our earthquake drills in elementary school, right? Oh, maybe not.
Yeah.
Earthquake drills, like, right? And we actually had an earthquake in Washington in 4th grade, and everyone kind of knew what to do, but then there were people everywhere. So I'm curious.
Yeah, I remember when I was in elementary school, we had like a code red, and which usually means there's like a person with a weapon on the school property, or there's something dangerous or hazardous outside that's not good for us. And so in this case, like I live right next to a state park in Florida, and so there was a bear on the elementary school campus, and so they called it code red. So like we all followed procedure and everything was fine, but it was interesting how like people emotionally responded, because initially we didn't really know what was going on. And same thing in high school, there was a local robbery nearby, and everyone responded, the way that they were supposed to. But at the same time, it was a lot of like, especially in high school, when we had the code red in high school, there was a lot of like chatter and whisper in the sense of like people didn't know what was going on, and at that time there was a lot of different things surrounding like school shootings. So it was interesting. It was definitely interesting. Like there was definitely an emotional response despite the fact that everyone had followed suit with the plan.
And Shelby, how did you guys come up with the plan, or how did the organization come up with the plan?
So I know just like the school board has their standard, like they have different codes, like code red, code yellow, I think it's like a code gray. And that's kind of, we don't understand like how they come up with the plan, but we're basically taught like first week of school, do a fire drill, do a code red. So like in the case of an emergency, we know. Publix, I don't know how they came up with their plan. So that's kind of more the level that I've always been at the receiving end, never at like the making the plan.
Yeah.
That was something that was thinking about is I wonder, as far as the book said, as far as brainstorming a list of possible crises that might happen, and then from there coming up with a plan. Then it made me think of like different situations, like industry, based on the industry or based on the product. Like what type of crisis could we encounter based on the industry that we're in, or based on the products that we sell. And it reminded me of a situation that occurred at my previous job, and it made me wonder if they even thought of the possibility of the crisis happening. When it happened, and everybody had to react to it, but it sounded like, because the industry had other companies in the industry had dealt with it or had the same issue, but I wasn't sure if the company ever thought that, oh well, this might happen to us.
Us, yeah.
Prepared.
Yeah.
I didn't think about it then, but I thought about it now. I'm going through this lesson, you know, thinking about that situation.
Well, it's a great call out. I like your note on crises being different in different areas, right? So like as when kids, right, going to the elementary school, the earthquake drills, right, we're doing what we're told to do. As we grow up, we get into the work world. I had I guess what would be considered a crisis situation at Starbucks when we had a gas leak. We actually had to evacuate the store with the fire department, right? And I think that something that I'm remembering came up the most for us, especially with the gas leak, is, well, do we have to?
Yeah.
Do we really have to evacuate?
Yeah.
He's going to push back here, and my manager was my best friend. She's like, well, we can't take the chance, right? There's other people at stake than just us. And of course, the fire department gets there, and they're like, it's fine. I'm like, well, you have to be sure. You have to be sure when it's not about you, right?
Yeah.
And I think, too, in my current job working from home, we kind of giggle when we do our OSHA training, the work safety and preparing for crisis, and we're like, well, don't fall off your own desk. Like, at home, make sure you put it in an appropriate spot. So I think, like, then we start thinking about the big crisis. Like, I think currently in my role, for me, like, I have environmental crises that could happen with hurricanes, right? Which would affect my work, but it's happening from a different factor. So I think it's interesting to think about how you were saying in different work crises, and then also the different crises that we go through as individuals based on where we live, or things that, like, we're told. Like, I'm new to Florida. I've only been here not even a year yet, and so I don't even know what to do for a hurricane. So there's that
If you ever
personal.
need help, I've been through like 7.
But that personal preparation, because going back to what Shelby was saying, is like we've always been the receiver of the information.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, I have 2 animals, one that's not mine that I'm raising for the service puppy, right? What do I do with her? What does CCI want me to do with her? What do I do with my own pet? Will I ever actually go to a shelter? You know, so I just think it's interesting that we think about, like, when I personally think about my experience with crisis, it's been in a capacity where I've been the receiver, but not ever really taking the initiative to figure out where I would be and what I would do. So I think about it, but I'd like to have my little prepared kit.
Yeah.
So
It comes in handy, trust me.
because we get trained, like we do every year. We have to renew like security meetings and things like that as managers, in addition to like our supervisor team. Like, so when you think of what is it, like, so human resource crisis stuff, and the training helps, but once you're in the situation, it's really hard to know how you're gonna react. And like, we've been on the receiving. I've also like had to be that manager in a crisis, and like with my store's not in the best area, so before I managed it, it was like robbed 4 different times, so it's like it has its downsides, but like I had to ask someone to leave our store, and he got in my face and threatened me. I had to call the cops, and all this stuff, and it was really nerve-wracking. And as much as that training I went through, being like, stay calm, you keep your space, like, don't, stay within like arm's length, it was still hard because it's like, oh my gosh, like I just want to run, like I want to get away from this. I don't do confrontation, So it's those things that's like, it's hard that you get trained in it, but once you're in it, you don't know, like you have to stay calm and try to manage it, but it's hard. It is really hard. And then I think about like, so here in California, we got earthquakes and fires, and I wonder, like, fires, with earthquakes, like, we have an evacuation kit in our store, so if something ever happens, like, we grab that. We have meeting spots, things like, for all our partners, customers, so that way there's a plan in effect. But it's very, like, grayish in a sense, so I wonder, I don't know what to do. So if I'm home at 4 o'clock in the morning, there's an earthquake, do I go to my store and check and make sure everyone's okay, or do I stay where I'm at? So I don't know that line yet as a manager. Like, if that happens, what do I do if I'm not in my store?
Yeah.
And, so we even had to deal, so like even with my district manager myself, with just recently this past week of getting our stores evacuated because of the fires, so we've dealt with that, and it's that piece was more just keeping the morale up in our stores. There was so much going on in our valley, and so much, loss of homes, people in shelters, and people were coming to our stores for their their getaway and not worrying about what was happening outside. That was more so like the stores that were still open. We had to keep that morale going while the other stores were being evacuated. So that's why, as you guys kind of saw in my presentation, like talking about my district manager, she would send us all messages and stuff like that, just saying, hey, like, these partners are okay, like, letting us know what partners were evacuated, if they were okay or not, where they were at, how the stores were doing, and then just giving us, like, kind of like that pep talk of, like, hey, just keep the morale up, keep having fun with stores that are open, like, this is going to get taken care of. So she was able to handle the crisis, and I guess she's been through this before, but it's having those managers, too, and that leadership that, no matter what, if you stay calm but keep that positive mindset, it kind of helps you get along, like, get through it a little easier than freaking out about it and being like, oh my gosh, we're in a crisis. Because at work can be kind of scary when you're in a crisis.
Well, I think it's a special kind of person, too, right? Because they have to manage their emotions while leading the emotions of many, right? And your DM seems to, like you said, have been through it, but found a way to manage your emotions with hers, with the employees below you, everything. And that emotional response. I mean, it is a crisis that you guys are facing. But you're also, I just think it's interesting that the community is looking for solace in your stores. And then your stores have to go down. And now this whole mindset of the community is, well, if they're shutting down, then something must really be wrong. Yet, returning, right, you have that place coming back. So it's amazing that kind of like chain of effects in a crisis that it kind of makes me think with the teacher referencing and the reading to the VP spill. Yeah. I think some of it too is, as an organization, you want to maintain face, right? You want to maintain, well, we're still a good company. We know how BP suffered. We know how that boycott happened. We know, how much damage there was. But I can't imagine being the head of BP in that situation and going, well, I didn't go cut open the thing and spill it, right? Like, this wasn't me.
Personal. Like.
Exactly, and this wasn't what we intended to do, but it happened. So I can't imagine the whirlwind of emotions that goes through from all different firing ranges, right? Within the company, outside the company, the customers, the gas users, all of these, the support staff to save the animals, and then you've got all this, you did this to us, right? So there's so much more involved in the people in the crisis. It's that external values, too, which I think is just...
Yeah, a lot of people are affected. In that situation, but in any situation, there could be multiple people affected besides within the core group.
Yeah, and it seems, Sheila, with your DM, really understanding that it's not just about you.
Yeah.
You seem to take that crisis situation and say, listen, I'm aware that we're all in this together, but there are other people who are in it as well, and we need to be the best that we can be. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Talk about crisis management.
Something that I want to add to the conversation that I think can be like related back to the BP spill, like the BP in itself, I think after like looking at post-crisis, that a community of people came together, like not just BP itself, but a lot of community partners came together to help clean up. And I think something that is in the news today a little bit, I don't know if you've heard, is there's a town called Ellicott City in Baltimore, Maryland, and I actually was born there. And my parents go back and visit frequently, and they actually just had a really bad flash flood, and a lot of the old stores that have been in buildings for like 100-year-old buildings were actually totally demolished. And so I think this goes into post-crisis mode of the sense that like community partners coming together. It's really been a big community effort to help support these store owners who have lost their stores and their businesses to help get them back off the ground. Because they basically just lost their lives, and the way that the jobs and the businesses that they had were all they did. So I look at that in comparison to the BP spill as well, as because I know like as terrible as it was, big government community partners came out, BP came out, and I think some other, I remember hearing in the news like other community partners within that area, Alaska, like the state of Alaska, like came out and like they helped to clean up. And it wasn't just, okay, it's your fault, you have to clean it up. It's more so, happen, let's see how we can continue forward together. So
right, well, how we can come together. That's a really, really good call out. I think one thing that we probably tend to do in a crisis situation is place blame. And for Sheila, for you with the fires, okay, like that could go back to who started the fire, or it could go back to the fact that we're at our 15-minute mark, or it could go back to the fact that it's happening and we need to do something about it. To your point, Shelby, right? So I think it's interesting too when we have emotion-led different types of crises. Like when a town gets demolished, I think there's a different emotional response, right? There's sadness, fear, there's that wonder of what's next. And then you have a crisis like the BP spill where the same emotions are coming out, but it's like you have the company who's attempting, again, to maintain face, and is probably like, what's next here? But I think when we meet on that common ground, like you were saying, and everybody comes together to complete I know we actually had tornadoes in Sarasota this year, in Florida, that actually hit right down the road from me. And it was interesting what I learned, and maybe this happens a lot, Shelby, my Florida friend. They actually set up in one of the parks here, and they have all the insurance people come out, they have all the housing people come out, and they all meet, and it's just known that in Sarasota County, if something happens, this is where you go the next day to take care of all those matters in one place. That's that plan, right? Yeah, I just wanted to point that out. We are at that 16-minute mark, so if we want to round up, we can. Is there any last-minute comments on? I think it's a very intriguing topic. It was interesting to see that this is where our teacher focuses her studies. I wonder too.
I think there's a lot of crisis going on, like in the world today, like not necessarily like fires or flash floods, but like you can look at like poverty or like you know, environmentalism in the sense of like the destruction of the environment. Like these are all crises. For example, like you can look at it as a global worldly view. Like we just had COP22, which was, you know, however many 200 plus world leaders coming together to address environmental sustainability. And so I think you can look at it that in the sense a crisis doesn't necessarily have to be a one-time event, but can be an ongoing event. And how do we deal with crisis as an ongoing event too? And I think that's interesting. And I agree that it's interesting that our professor focuses on this because I think that there's a lot of crisis today in the world. A lot of leaders are trying to figure out how to, you know, solve these crises.
Well, I think it's interesting too because, like, especially for the environmental planning, some of these crises have been around a long time and don't have a plan. Yes. Or there's a continuous adaptive change to the plan, right? So I think that that's a piece we probably missed in a corporate environment sometimes where, well, yeah, this is just what we'll do. And then the time hits, and that was your 10-year-ago plan. And it's different. You have 4 buildings now instead of 1, and you have 500 employees instead of 20, and you didn't modify that plan or even think to re-advise it, or everything just happened so fast and no, it could never happen to me, right? I think there's all those different pieces as well. Great call out, Shelby.
Yeah.
Good conversation, guys. It's interesting how we got from elementary school earthquakes. I actually had a cougar on campus once in Washington, so me and Shelby have that relatability with
the animals.
All the way to work, all the way to environmental, to the big picture. And definitely we're a group of leaders, ladies. We see the big picture. Don't just job done. Cool, well let me stop this. You guys cool with that?
Yeah.
Yes.